What's going on, everybody? I'm Primal Liquid and welcome to my simple review for Atelier Sophie 2. Now, when I say simple review, what I mean by that is very simple. We're not going to be breaking down all the graphical differences between the versions. We're not going to be getting into detail over the frame rate or anything like that. This is simply going to be an objective-based review based on a few things. The gameplay elements, actual mechanics of the game, such as syntheses, the new major gathering system, and all things like that. We're going to very briefly talk about the story. It is going to be spoiler-free, so don't worry on that front, like, at all. And then we're also, unfortunately, going to be talking about some bugs, because yes, I have found a couple, but we're going to speak about them a little bit later, because there's a bit to discuss for them. Now, I do want to preface this by saying Koei has given me the code for Atelier Sophie 2. Now, that is not going to impact this review in general, because you'll definitely see that I'm not going to be all nice and happy-go-lucky here. No, there are some problems, and we do need to actually discuss them. However, that being said, even though there are problems, there are good things as well. So, let's just jump into things, shall we? And first of all, I think the big one that we really need to talk about is going to be the bugs that I found. Now, Atelier it's no stranger to, the odd few bugs, crashes, things like that, things that you would typically expect from a JRPG. However, this time around, the bugs aren't so much, they aren't very much a good thing like the quality bug in the original Sophie. No, this time they're actually quite annoying. Now, I have reached out to Koei just to try and clarify what's going on. Do they know about these bugs? Is there a fix planned? And things like that. The English office only handles localization and translation, so they're unsure. They have reached out to the Japanese team, like the actual devs. It's a Japanese holiday at the moment, though, so I'm still waiting on hearing back from them currently. However, the bugs I am specifically on about is there is a location in the game that seems to be completely unreachable. And judging by the map, you should definitely be able to get there because there are enemies there. There's a door there, there's a teleportation crystal, and there are weather control devices there. So these four things mean that area should definitely be accessible. The problem is, it's not. Now, in my save, I've completed the game. I've got near enough 100% of the trophies. I've got all areas unlocked, all events are done, and things like that. So I'm definitely not missing an area or anything. And you know what, let me just quickly change over to the game real quick, and I will show you what I mean. Don't worry, there's going to be no spoilers here. So if we just load up the map real quick. Now, as you can see right here, this is one of the maps in the actual game. Now, once you go down this little pathway here in the middle, you see this little bit here that leads to the left into this big section. You can't get to that because it's too high to jump up. Now, typically, the way you would actually do this in any other area is you would control the weather. So you would make it rain, and then you would use a snowing weather control to actually freeze the flooded section that the rain causes to create a much higher pathway for you. So realistically, if I just... Right, that pathway pretty much in line with my finger where it's going along and up like the L shape, that does actually get filled with water when you make it rain here. The downside is you can't actually freeze the water anywhere because there's no snowing control here. So there is two weather devices there, and there's two there as well. Now, both of these devices are both sun and rain, so you can't actually freeze this water here. There is a door and a teleportation crystal down the bottom as well. Now, I've gone through every area. I've gone through every door to see if maybe I have to get into this place from, a different side, a different area. And I have double checked these results. there is no door that I currently have access to that leads to this area. So what I'm thinking is this is just another zone in this general area, and it's going to be a dead end, basically. You know, there's going to be a few collectibles, a few gathering points, and things like that in there, but there's going to be no other door. Now, currently, there is no way whatsoever to get to that. I have reached out to Korea, as I mentioned, just to see, you know, what they have to say about it, but I've yet to hear back. Now, since we are still on the case of bugs, let's talk about the other one. Now, trait combinations are back. If I just very quickly pull them up real quick. Unfortunately, there are a lot of traits that need combinations. So remember the whole, you know, resonance and things like that? It's worse than that this time. Aside from the fact there is a lot more, they're a lot more vague in what they actually combine into. So, for example, here, Blue Surge, you know, combines into a different trait when used with anxiety or mind in the name. Now, that's fair enough, you know, that's very straightforward. The problem is it's not only anxiety and mind that it combines with, it does combine with the other surges as well to create different colours, which then combine with other traits to create the actual effects. The problem here is some of these traits don't actually combine. For example, I have Trusty Leader here. It increases attack, defense, and speed by 25. Now, there are a ton of other traits that combine when associated with a trait that has leader or teammate in the name or has an effect along those lines. The problem is none of these traits actually combine with them. They combine with other things. There are a few, however, which I've gone through the entire list of traits, basically. I spent a good, 3 hours just looking at the combinations that I can do across many different Sympathies items, and I was not able to get them to combine with anything. Now, it is entirely possible that I just don't have the trait required. I'm very unsure of that actually being the case, though, simply due to the fact I've not had a new trait now in about 2 or 3 days from farming, post-game bosses and things like that on a high difficulty. So I'm not quite sure what's really going on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for the Steam version to officially release to get a data mined trait list, just to see if, maybe there is a bug, maybe the combination is bugged, or if these traits simply aren't supposed to be out yet. Maybe they're just early DLC traits, which has happened before in Atelier. Or it could be, I'm just missing a trait. So for now, the trait one is a possible bug, but just so you know, it is there. Right, so bugs out the way, let's move on to the meat of everything, which is going to be Sympathies. Now, Atelier it's a game built around Sympathies. That's pretty much what everybody enjoys about these games. It's where all the meat is, it's where all the fun is, and it's pretty much the main selling point. The problem is, the way Sympathies is done in Atelier is it changes every other game, basically. And what I mean by that is there are a few different ways to go about it depending on the game. For example, Atelier Riser really simplified the Sympathies down to make it much easier for newcomers, where all you had to do was, you put some colors in and it essentially moved you around a grid, which then allowed you to, get all the effects and things like that. This time it's a little bit different. We are essentially back to the Tetris version. The downside is it's actually much worse now, unfortunately. Now, I'm just in the process of loading a Sympathies up right now so I can show you guys, but I am doing this off screen just so, you don't actually get any potential spoilers that you might not want and things like that. Now, anyone who has played, the original Sophie one, Lydian Sewell, I think the other one was Aisha? I could be mistaken on that. But yeah, anybody who's played these games before will essentially know, the general layout for the Sympathies. But now that I've got it up, let's just go ahead and very quickly change over again, because there are a few problems with this Sympathies that I think are going like is going to cause some issues for some people. Now, this is the general grid right here. Let me just move the camera up for you guys. So this is the general synthesis grid right now. On the far left, you've got the catalyst, which you don't actually have straight off the bat. You know, you will unlock that about 4 to 5 hours in the game. Until you have the catalyst, you actually only have a 5x5 grid. That's all you have. So the grid right now is the biggest size it can be, but until you get catalyst, you are limited to 5x5, which pretty much means any form of synthesis you do early on is going to be way worse than anything you do after you unlock catalysts. That is just an unfortunate situation to be in, because it means anything you make early on is going to be bad, basically. Kind of to be understood, since, you know, synthesis early on, and you're never going to be using it late game. However, it is just a shame that you are locked from some of the good effects so early on and so long, even though you could technically make them. Now, down in the bottom right, you can see I need fire, ice, lightning, and light elemental blocks to actually finish off this Philosopher's Stone and gain all the effects. Now, you see how there are some effects that are currently red? Well, that's because of the synthesis catalyst that I'm using. What I need to do to get those red sections actually usable is I need to press R1. Now, by doing that, it does create some locked out nodes that I just can't do anything with, unfortunately. I can't place anything if it highlights those nodes. Now, one of the big problems is you see how they are grayed out. There are two ways to actually get those grayed out sections actually usable. The first is by doing a link with the actual synthesis. And by link, I mean, you see how there are two colors there that are, you know, much more vibrant than the others? They are essentially link-capable nodes. So what you have to do is you have to combine links like I just did there. And you will be able, like, as I just linked 4 reds, as you can now see, my red bar on the bottom right has increased further, so I can get more effects that way. In practice, this wouldn't be too bad. The problem is, it also pretty much means that you have no real way of getting all the effects if it uses 4 different elements. Now, you can change Catalyst to a couple of different effects. However, even with that, because of how high some of these effects actually are, for example, 22 fire, 20 ice, 18 light, and 15 lightning. Because of that, if you actually want to get all these high tier effects, you're pretty much limited to 1 catalyst, and that's going to be the Growlier catalyst, because that increases the effects level by 50% of your links. So if I have, you know, 10 links, that gives me 5 extra fire levels, basically. And this is pretty much the only one I found capable of reaching all those high tier effects somewhat easily. The others, not really suited for it. Now, the problem with this is, along with the restricted panels, the RNG of getting the actual good patterns on the items, like you see just below the quality, those are all the different like nodes that I have for these items. Getting a good set of these is going to be very RNG heavy. You're going to be grinding mobs a lot, you're going to be grinding bosses a lot. You're going to be using major gathering a hell of a lot. Like, trust me, you're going to be, if you want to make endgame items, you're going to have to use major gathering, basically, just to try and eliminate some of the RNG factor. The problem here, though, is you're now essentially looking for 3 things when it comes to these items. You're looking for the actual colors, you're looking for the stars on them, you're looking for the traits, and you're looking for the quality, which I suppose is actually 4 things instead of 3. But yeah, so there's gonna be a lot of RNG going into this, unfortunately, which means it's gonna be way more difficult end game compared to, you know, the previous couple of ateliers, which has typically just been a case of, you know, just farm your traits, farm your quality, and things like that. So we do have an extra level. Now, For seasoned Atelier fans, this isn't going to be that big of a problem, to be honest. Like, anybody who's played the series before, especially, you know, the Mysterious series, you're gonna be used to this sort of synthy style. The only downside is it's very, very unfair to new players of the series, because it's going to be very confusing and it's going to be very difficult for them to actually make the end game items, which I think, personally, I think is a step back from Atelier Ryza. Atelier Ryza did it really, really well, where it made the game very inclusive for newcomers. It made it easy for newcomers to jump in, and even though, yes, it was a little bit difficult for them in some sympathies, you know, I had quite a few comments of people asking, like, how do I do this? How do I do that? You know? Which it's just going to only get way worse with this style of sympathies, because there's going to be so much randomness involved, you know? So that's why I'm not a big fan of the restricted panels here. Now, it would be much easier if you could just get the maximum on the standard panel without the restricted nodes. It would still be difficult, but you would remove a massive level of frustration and a massive, massive time sink from the player, which is, it's just a shame that, you know, we've gone back to a point now of, how should I put it? I think it comes down to essentially a little bit of a lack of respect for new players. Because I know a lot of people weren't really huge fans of the sympathy system to begin with. And yet, here we are with no... excuse me. Here we are with no real changes, basically. So, unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of the sympathy system, because of the fact, you know, you can't get all the effects on items. Some items, well, I say some, most items, yes, you can get all effects on. Some of the good ones, like the endgame items, unfortunately, not gonna happen. Like, there's just no way. There's not enough space on the grid to get all the links and the levels that you actually need. Even with using items that increase the actual element of value via effects from, you know, seeds, which, yes, are back. I'll get onto them momentarily. You can craft items with effects and that, but even then, there are some items you're just not going to be able to create all the effects on while transferring your traits over and maintaining a high quality. It sucks, but that's just where we are, essentially. Now, let's move on and talk about the next thing, shall we? Which is going to be battles. Now, in Atelier, typically, the battles are skewed in one way or the other. And I think this is one of Sophie 2's best points, to be honest, because it's actually balanced the battles out very, very well. So, the way Atelier normally works is you would have alchemy-style characters and then you would have battle-style characters. Battle-style characters would have higher damage, higher stats in general, they would have higher health, and they would essentially attack things, use skills, and just do high damage that way. They would be able to use some items, but come endgame, that would not really be their go-to, you know? Now, however, that's changed, because one of the things that I found out is with the multiple attack system, where you can actually increase the number of attacks that your characters do, both via weapon effects, buffing items, and also character skills, you can actually get some absolutely ridiculously insane damage just through normal attacks, much like Atelier from, you know, a good 4 or 5 years ago, where just spamming attack was the way to go. That is now very, very balanced with item usage. Obviously, you know, I could be missing some overpowered item combination or some overpowered trait combination with the items, but so far, while items are dealing more damage than these physical based characters are, the damage difference isn't actually that high. Now, there is one particular item for Plocta, which is insanely broken. It is insanely broken. But you can only use that once before you have to go back to the Atelier, because it uses all your MP, basically. And there's no way about that. Like, you want it to use all your MP. And that is ridiculously overpowered. Which is probably going to be... if you've ever seen, like, charismatic DLC boss one-shot videos on YouTube, that's probably going to be the item used, to be honest, because I really don't see them making an even stronger item compared to that. Now, because of this, I'm really excited because of the level of balance. You know, if you don't like items, that's fine. Go full physical. It works. Likewise, if you don't like full physical, you don't like using skills or anything like that, go items. It works. They've also done a really good job of splitting the characters. You have 3 usable alchemists and 3 usable battle characters. So you can have a full team of full physical or full item users if you want. The only thing I don't like about the battle system is the new aura system. Now, if you don't know what aura is, it's essentially a shield around the mob which will have a bunch of different effects depending on the type of aura. You will basically do next to no damage on that mob until you break the aura, and you can break it by doing a number of things. You can attack it physically, you can use magical abilities, you can use items, you can use elemental abilities, you can debuff and things like that. Depending on what type of aura it is, depends on the type of reaction you will give. Now, each hit on the aura will lower it by, you know, anywhere from 1 to 10 or 15 points, depending on what you do and the effects of the items that you use on said aura. And of course, how effective it is on the aura as well. Now, when aura is first introduced in the game, it's not that big of a deal. You know, it's not happening all the time. It's every now and again. Typically bosses have it more than anything early on. The odd enemy will also have it though, but you know, it's not really that annoying. It just makes the battle last, you know, a few turns longer while you try and fight through it. The problem comes more around the mid game, where every single fight has an enemy with aura, and it's just it slows down so much. Like, it got to the point where once you hit that halfway mark, I just found myself skipping battles more and more because they aren't hard. You know, it's like you're absolutely decimating these fights in 1 or 2 items, and it just got to the point where the aura was just becoming tedious. You know, personally, I think the aura system, it in itself is not too bad. More than anything though, it needs to be a slightly higher counter, but restrict it to bosses and strong mobs. Having it every single fight, even on trash mobs, is just going to become tedious, in my opinion anyway. Yes, there are ways to absolutely decimate the aura very quickly, but even then, you're limited on your item usage, and with the amount of fights that you are going to be going through, even if you are fully set up with 3 alchemists just to tackle all the auras, you won't really have enough items to just decimate every single set of mobs in a zone, which I think is a shame, personally, you know. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the actual aura system. Now, let's move on to gathering and major gathering. And this is going to be a big one, unfortunately. So when it comes to gathering, it's very much, you know, your usual Atelier. You run around, there's loads of points on the field and things like that. The downside is how many points are on the field this time. Now, first of all, the basket is massive. Like, don't worry, you're not going to be filling your 60 or 70 empty slot baskets and going back every zone. No, I think, if I remember correctly, the starting size for the basket is like 200, and your container size is a massive 10,000, which is a really nice improvement to previous Atelier games, and you can massively increase that basket even further. It's like, right now, I think my basket is around 600 or something like that. It is insane how big the basket actually is. One of the biggest problems, though, comes with major gathering. The newest gathering system in Atelier Sophie 2 And it's essentially a mini game where you can choose what item. Well, you can choose between 1 of 3 items depending on your gathering tool and its level. So, you know, if you can only gather level 1 items, you're only going to be able to just choose that 1 item. Once you're in the mini game, you can effectively get more quality, you can get more quantity, you can increase the link amounts, which is those little stars that I was showing you before on the synthesis screen. You can increase the actual element. So, for example, if it's an item that normally only comes with water elements in the first slot, you can then give it 3 lightning elements for the last 3. You can give it lightning, fire, wind. You can give it 3 wind. Doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. It is a little RNG, though, in terms of what you can actually get. But, and this is something I didn't actually realize until about the 60-70% mark. Major gathering is the most important thing in this game. Now, it doesn't seem that way early on. The way it's described is more a case of, yeah, you know, you can have this fun minigame and get some way better items early. No. So, much like previous games where you have to choose between, you know, do you want to gather higher tier items? So, you know, level 2 items, level 3 items, or do you want to increase your major gathering level? Because there are 3 levels to it, level 1, 2, and 3. Each increased level gives you more time or more attempts during major gathering to get the effects and, you know, elements that you actually want on the item. Now, me being a typical Atelier player, you know, I instinctively went for the higher tier items just so I could make, you know, more syntheses earlier on and things like that. That was a very, very bad decision on my part. Because of the fact of, you know, you want as many link nodes on these items as you can. It pretty much, like, once you get to endgame, basically, or once you get to making those high tier items using the catalysts, you need those links. If you don't have these links, you're not completing these items properly, basically. You can make them, but you're not getting the effects that you want, unfortunately. So basically, it gets to a point where you will run around gathering the low tier items, but you will prioritize the major gathering nodes. However, there are 2 problems with major gathering, and I'm going to show you right now what they are. Don't worry, no spoilers again. I've shortened the screen so that it's only showing the very first area you go to. Now, as you can see on the far right here, these are the items I can gather in this zone. Firstly, you might notice there is absolutely no indication of what gathering tool you need. Because yes, you do need a gathering tool for about 80% of these items, and it's different gathering tools for each one. There's no indication of that whatsoever, which I think is really, really bad. In my honest opinion, I think there needs to be a symbol somewhere next to the item just to show what gathering tool is used. Just for the simple fact of, if I was to say, right, you see the butterfly in the middle there? Now, let's say I buy that from the shop. If I buy that from the shop, that shows up in this list, even though I've never gathered it before. And that's annoying because if you buy it, like some items you buy from the shops won't actually give you an unlock for the recipe book, which is a shame. But I could then go to this this area thinking, oh well, you know, I can gather it here, but I don't have a bug catcher's net. Well, sorry, you're out of luck there. So now I have to go and find a new zone where I can actually get this item without the bug catcher's net. Which I think is just, it's a ball ache for the player, basically. It's a real ball ache for the player. The other downside is, it doesn't tell you what items you can gather through major gathering. Because no, you can't gather all of these items. Which is annoying to say the least. Oh, and if you change the weather, the items you can gather also change as well. It's not as fun as you might think. It seems... Oh, excuse me. It seems fun early on. You know, changing the weather, gathering all these new items. As you get, again, around halfway through the game, You're going to be getting annoyed when you have to look for one specific item that you need for the recipe book, or one specific item you need for synthesis and things like that. You're going through all these lists, you're constantly checking the weather. You know, you find the area that it's in, you go there, you change the weather, and then there's one section on the whole map where you can gather this item from. And then you get screwed on RNG and you don't get it. So you have to reload the map, run over, change the weather, go all the way back to this one zone, and try again. It's not that fun, in my opinion. So what I think needs to happen here is very, very simple. Firstly, there needs to be a gathering tool icon on these items to show what tool you actually need, which just isn't there at the moment, and I think that's incredibly stupid not to have. Other than that, there needs to be a symbol to show you what items you can get from each zone via Major Gathering. Major Gathering is... It's so important. It's just way too important not to have that detail on. Not only that, if I just very quickly... Well, I mean, I don't even need to load in. So if you look on that map right now, can you see the Scythe and the pickaxe icons? There's two in the bottom right, two near the bridge, one on the other side of the bridge, and then one in the top left. Now, those are major gathering points, okay? Firstly, doesn't tell you what tool you need, because no, they are not Scythe and pickaxe. Well, all those particular ones are Scythes, yes. Later on, though, you do get more. You know, you get the fishing rod, you get the bomb rod, you get the slingshot, which is a new gathering tool. Actually, quite fun, that is. But yeah, you don't get to know anytime what tool you actually need. So it's like when you want to unlock a new recipe in your recipe book and it needs, let's say, you have to use Major Gathering 3 times with a fishing rod. You're going to be going through every individual map looking, like going to all these different gathering spots, looking for the one fishing spot that you can actually find. Because one of the things that I dislike is... there is essentially no major gathering spots for fishing. There's a couple, but really not many. The vast majority early on are the Scythe. But then after you get around 30% of the game, most of them become the pickaxe or the bomb rod. And like there's a couple that use, you know, the bug catcher's net or the slingshot. Or the fishing rod, but there's really not many. So just being able to determine at a glance which one is where would be so very helpful to the player, and I think it's a real shame that they didn't include that, especially with how important Major Gathering is. So it's actually because of this that I've now spent I've spent about 4 hours yesterday, and I'm going to carry on working on it. I'm going through every individual zone now. I am checking all the the major gathering spots, and I'm making a list of all the items you can get from them for every different weather as well. And it's a long process because once you actually get into how many zones there are, and then how many areas there are on the zone, like right now, you know, there's 2 zones in this area. So there's essentially... I mean, you're probably looking at about 40 or 50 zones total, and they're not that quick to go through. So it's a long process, and I have to do it per weather. So it can be literally anywhere up to 5 times per zone, which is, you know, it is what it is, unfortunately. It's just something that we have to do because they didn't think to just include an easy lookup for us, basically. So even though Major Gathering is there, it's fun, it's just not all that intuitive. And what I'm going to do real quickly is I'm going to go to a Major Gathering zone and just show you guys what it actually is and how it works, essentially. Because it can be fun. It can be fun. I'm going to show you the Scythe one real quick, which if I just change over again now. So this is going to be the Scythe Major Gathering. Now, this changes depending on something very simple, like the actual gathering tool. So the Scythe has its own. Pickaxe and bomb rod are shared. Fishing is its own little minigame, and the fishing one is goddamn terrible. Let me tell you now, the fishing, you're not going to enjoy Major Gathering with fishing. The slingshot and the bug catcher's net is the most fun and the easiest in my opinion. So for the Scythe, what you do is you need to go to these special gathering nodes. They are on the map, and you can also see them by the huge amount of sparkles around them. You choose the item that you want. Obviously, my Scythe is, you know, it's max level. I'm able to gather all 3 tier items, and I have major gathering maxed as well. So let's just go for the tier 1 item, the Tall Torn. Now, what I have to do here is, well, if I just move the camera a little bit. So, as you can see, on the far right, those 4 boxes are essentially, if I get the star, I get extra link nodes. Those link nodes are the stars on the elements, like you see at the very bottom. However, they do not add to the starting element. Keep that in mind. So, for example, the starting element on this Tall Torn is 1 square water block and 1 star water block. No matter what I get, that's never going to change, basically. That's always going to be the same. The stars that I get are only for elements I get from this minigame. The basket is quantity. Every basket you get gives you 3 extra items. The little leaf with like the little star next to it is the quality. Every quality you get increases it by 20. And then the last one is coal. Every time you hit that, you get 100 extra coal. That is above and beyond the absolute worst one. You never want to get that. There's also one more, which you can't actually see spinning right now because it is RNG, as I said earlier. And that is, there's a small word that just says all. What that does is that increases all 4 boxes on the right. Now, with Major Gathering, you essentially get 2 attempts per level. So level 1 Major Gathering, you get 2 attempts. Level 2, you get 4. And level 3, which is the final level, you get 6 attempts. So what you want to do is you want to go through for the elements. And right now, there's the all that you can see. So I'm going to go for that because it's actually the best one to get. No all, no links. So we're going to get another element. Let's just go ahead and get, you know, fire, whatever. It doesn't really matter. You know what? I'm feeling like this Tall Torn is going to be used in medicine. We need tons of fire, so let's get another fire. Right, I've got the elements that I want, so I don't want any more elements. So now we want to improve the item itself. If we're going to be using a lot of these, I'll go for quantity, which is the basket. But if I'm only using a few, I'm going to go for quality right now. So we got some quality right there. Let's try for another one. Okay, no, I messed up. I got wind, unfortunately. So I ruined my item. It is what it is, you know, that item's no good to me now. I can't use that. We only had 1 link node as well, which means, unfortunately, we didn't get too many links. But as you can see, the quality right now is quite high for me. So, you know, it's 100 quality, and typically in this area, you know, you're only going to be getting items that are around 20 quality. That's just because of my Scythe being so high, basically, and I did get a quality increase as well. But traits, not the best, even though I have the trait XL on my Scythe, so I should get the best traits. But the issue here is the actual links. So I'm only getting 2 stars, well, 1 or 2 stars per element. This item's useless. Like, I'm never going to use these. That's not enough stars, basically, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to change back over to the camera because there's going to be a lot of spoilers on the screens I'm going to go through right now. And I'm just going to go back to the Atelier to show you some of the, you know, the better sort of items that you actually want in terms of how many stars you actually want to aim for, you know. So with that, let's just show you this item real quick here. Now, this item right here is something that I did actually get from Major Gathering. As you can see, there is 4, well, there are 2 slots of 4 stars for the lightning. Then I've got 1 with 3 and then just a green with 2. Now, that is actually really, really freaking good. Like, really freaking good. The only downside is the 4-star sections are both the same. So, you know, they both have a star going up, they both have a star going to the left, so I can't really use them together, unfortunately. What would have made that the best is if one of them was in the 4 corners, because then I can just combine them, basically. I combine them, get a huge bunch of links just off that one item, which is freaking insane. RNG wasn't with me, so I didn't get it, you know. I've now got to go back and try and gather more of these dragonflies to get that specific pattern, unfortunately. And that's why with Major Gathering, you should 100% focus on the actual Major Gathering on your gathering tools rather than the actual items you can get. Always focus Major Gathering. You're gonna regret it if you don't. Trust me on that. Okay, with Major Gathering out of the way, let's talk about maps. Now, I can't actually show you too many of the maps because of spoilers. I don't want to spoil anything here, so we're just gonna talk about this. When it comes to these maps, honestly, I'm not a fan. I'm not a big fan for a few reasons. Firstly, the weather control, while it seems nice, it gets redundant really, really fast. Because what ends up happening is, especially in some of the later maps, which are really, really big, they're set up as mazes, basically. You have to run through the map, change an element, like you have to change the weather, run all the way back to the start of the map, go through this new zone, which you can now go through because you changed the weather, do whatever you're meant to do there, run all the way back across, change the weather again, and then run all the way back. So it gets so tedious, like really, really tedious, which early on, it's not too bad. It's really not too bad early on because of the simple fact you only have a few weather controls. You know, you start off, well, you don't start with any. The first time you unlock them, you get 2, and then about 30% of the way into the game, you'll get a 3rd, and then at around the 50 or 60% mark of the game, you'll get a 4th, and then, you know, around the 70 to 80% of the game, you'll get the last one. Now, these weather controls, you are limited in the amount of times you use them. If you use all of your uses up, you do have to go synthesize another one, basically, so do keep that in mind. However, if you're going after, you know, a bunch of items, you're just trying to progress, you're trying to check every section, get all the treasure chests and things like that, you're going to be resynthesizing these items a lot. Now, once you get to post-game, you do actually gain infinite usage, which is amazing. I have to admit, it is absolutely freaking amazing, and I love that. I wish there was a way to get that, you know, in the actual story before post-game, but it's understandable why it's not available from a story perspective. Now, other than that, I did mention it briefly in the gathering. Oh my god, I can't talk. I did mention it briefly in the gathering section, but you have to change the weather for specific types of items as well. So going through the whole map, changing the weather, running all the way back, and then checking every single gathering node, just because there's only one node in the entire map that has the item you're looking for, it gets annoying, unfortunately. And there's no way of... Ooh, there's no actual way of sugarcoating this, unfortunately. Some of the maps are designed well. I do like the feel, I do like the look, and more than anything, some maps actually do just play out fun, you know, especially the first time you gain the ability to control the wind weather. That is really fun, for sure. So it's not as if it's all bad with the maps. I personally think they just need to be a little smaller, you know? Like, some Atelier games do lend themselves well to larger maps. Sophie 2, in my opinion, not so much, just because of the weather control, you know? If weather control was not there, I think it would be fine. I honestly think it would be perfectly fine for the maps to stay the size they are, have the gathering nodes they are. But because of all the back and forth you're constantly doing on these maps, I think they're just a little too big. Especially with how many times you need to backtrack as well. Now, backtracking is nothing new in Atelier. There is always cases where you need a specific gathering tool, or you need a specific item, like, you know, you can jump higher and things like that. Things like this is not new to Atelier. The problem with Sophie 2 is the amount of times you have to do it. Near enough every zone. Not every zone, but near enough every zone. you will have to revisit at the end of the game. And the reason for that is a lot of these zones are locked off by the final weather control. So just the simple fact of, you have to go through all these places. You're going through all these places so many times for items and traits and things like that. And then you have to still go back through every single zone to get the treasure chest. Like, it's just... It doesn't... It just seems overboard, in my opinion, Like, if it was just a few zones, that's whatever, No problem. No problem at all. But when you have to go through every single zone so many times, you're just like... you get a bit drained. You do start feeling a bit drained, especially as you get closer and closer to the end of the game. If you're trying to get everything the first time through, because it means you have to just go and double check every zone again every time you get a new weather crystal, and it's not that great in my opinion. But as I say, it mainly comes down to the weather. I think the novelty is good. I do think the idea is good. The implementation is okay. I think they just went a little overboard in the weather control usage, basically. I think that just needs toning down a little, in my opinion. But, everyone is free to have their own opinion on this. That's just mine. Now, let's move on to the story. Now, Atelier stories are always hit and miss. They always are, they always will be. A lot of people like them, some people don't. Also, let me just say, yes, there is no English dub. It is sub only, so, all you people who are dub only, guys, just feel free to comment. No sub, no buy. No dub, no buy. Whatever you guys want to say. I'm not getting into that whole argument with you. If you like the game, get the game. If you don't like the game, don't get the game. That's up to you. Now, when it comes to the story, essentially the entire premise is, and by the way, this is not a spoiler. This happens literally in the intro cutscene. Is Sophie and Placta are out in the field. Placta gets sucked into a wormhole that opens up. Sophie grabs her and tries to go along. They are sucked into the dream world Erdewij. I've probably pronounced that horribly, horribly wrong. I'm sorry. It's essentially a world made to grant dreams. Everybody in there is immortal. They live forever. Like, they don't age, basically. And they're there to work on their dreams. Somebody wants to be the best cook in the world and learn how to make every dish. That's fine. He can stay there as long as he wants and practice all his cooking. Doesn't matter. And while you're there, you see the early story is essentially. No, I'm not gonna say that because it is a little spoilerish actually. So we're not gonna talk about that. All I am gonna say is, like some of the typical Atelier games, the story will change over halfway through. Well, around halfway through anyway, where you accomplish your first goal and then you move on to a second goal, which is now related to the first goal. Think of it as like kind of a consequence of the first action, essentially. It's like what you do for the first one affects the second one, and so on and so forth. The only problem is, honestly, it's very forgetful. Like, the story is very forgetful for sure. Like, I wasn't really doing much optional stuff when I was going through the story. And like now there's so many bits I can't remember. There were so many bits I can't remember about the story because it didn't impact me. It didn't really do anything for me, Now, don't get me wrong, there is some good jokes. There is some good jokes for sure, and I do like some of the humor involved. And the general premise of the story is it's okay. But the big problem is character involvement, I think. That's probably the most important one, character involvement in the story. Because it essentially boils down to the entire story, like no, this isn't a spoiler. The entire story boils down to two characters, basically. That is literally the entire story. It's simply about two characters. Um, and you will start to notice that very quickly as time goes on. And even in the character events, like the main party events where you're building friendship with a specific character, some of the events are good, but like in some of the actual events, the character whose event it is isn't even the star of that event. And it's like, well, why am I having this character's event be all about this character? You know, why is that just not in their own event, if that makes sense? And it leads you to think, why? You know, like why is this character so much less important than this character? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I think a lot of people will start realizing this around that halfway mark. Just because of the simple fact of you have to do all these character events. If you want to do any form of synthesis, you need to do character events. And the reason for that is there are a ton of synthesis skills which are locked behind your friendship levels with other characters. So if you don't like doing these events, well, at least you can skip them, I guess. If you do like doing them, then hey, you now have a good reward for it. And of course, all the events pretty much end with getting the ultimate weapons for those characters as well. So enjoy the nice little reward there. Okay, now we're on to the last two things now, and they're essentially sort of combined basically, because we're gonna be well, you know what, I am gonna combine them. We're gonna be talking about crashing and loading times. Now, just to preface this, I have a PS4 copy running on a PS5 from an internal NVMe drive. It is the Seagate Firecuda, so pretty much faster than the built-in PS5 drive, to be honest. Loading times, when I load the game up, it takes about 20 to 25 seconds to load. Yes, PS4 games aren't properly optimized for PS5 loading, but they still load faster than they do on a PS4. So that initial loading screen is pretty damn long. But not only that, a lot of the loading screens you'll have in game are typically anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds. So it's quite long on the actual loading times, to be honest. And if it's this bad on the PS5, I'm a little worried about PS4 loading times, because that's only going to be worse. Especially with all the zoning you're going to be constantly doing, because you're going to have a lot of back and forth. So there's going to be a lot of zoning things here. And I think if you're actually playing this on a PS4, I do think you might get annoyed at the loading times. Not early on, but I think it will eventually happen, just because they do get annoying. You know, it's like if you're going out for one specific item, you don't get it, and you're just constantly having to reload for that item. It's you know, it's not all that fun to just sit there staring at a loading screen, unfortunately. As for crashes, Atelier is very mixed when it comes to crashes. Some people experience a lot, some people don't experience any. Me personally, most Atelier games, I'll only experience 1 or 2 crashes, somewhere along that, and that's over about 100 hours worth of gameplay. Not too bad, you know. Sophie, on the other hand, I don't know if it's just me, maybe there's something wrong and it'll be fixed in a day 1 patch. I have no idea. I've had a few crashes. I've definitely had more than I normally get in Atelier games. However, the cause of the crashes is always the exact same way. It is every single crash I've had, and there's probably been about 8 or 9 so far, and I've got 70 to 80 hours clocked currently. Every single crash has been at the start of a battle. Every single crash has been related to starting a battle. So I don't know if it's weather related, maybe the game just messed up because of the long periods of playtime, or whether there's just something funky going on. I don't know. That's going to need more people to test and report on. All I'm going to say is make sure you have autosave turned on. Make sure you save often, because you don't want to play for 4 or 5 hours, crash and lose all of that progress. So just play it safe, leave the autosave turned on. Anyway though, everybody, I know this has gone on for quite a while now. I just wanted to share all my experiences, my thoughts and things like that about Atelier Sophie 2. All in all, honestly, I think Atelier fans will enjoy the game. I don't think it's going to be that fun for newcomers to the series, though. Like, when it comes to, if somebody asks me, like, if they've never played Atelier before, if somebody asks me what game would be the best for them to start with, I'm still going to be suggesting Riser and Riser 2. Simply due to the fact that they are far, far more newcomer friendly. The learning curve on Sophie 2 is going to be steep for anybody new. And even for those who are experienced with this sort of synthesis, it's still gonna be annoying, I think. Like, I think it's gonna get annoying very, very quickly come endgame crafts and things like that. So I don't recommend this for new players, honestly. This is more for existing fans of the series more than anything. I don't, like, some new players might enjoy it. I don't think the majority will. And I definitely think Riser and Riser 2 is more newcomer friendly, because there are just so many things that are a step back, you know. There are just so many things that are a step back in Sophie 2, unfortunately. Just mechanical things, which I think is a shame, but that's where we are. Anyway though, guys, let me know your thoughts down below. Obviously, Atelier Sophie does release tomorrow, so are you getting it? Are you not getting it? Are you looking forward to it? Has this video changed your mind? You know, let me know everything. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up. If not, then, I don't know, leave a comment telling me why. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's like I have a whole bunch of guides ready for Sophie 2, so look forward to them. As always though, everybody, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.